This is the Sales Babble Podcast, episode 316, Email Salesmanship, an interview with Rob and Kennedy.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Hello, Sales Babblers. This is Pat Helmers, and in this episode, we meet Rob and Kennedy of the Email Marketing Show podcast. Today, we babble about the one continual challenge that sales professionals face, and that's to remember to follow up with qualified prospects. Following up is not as fun as hunting, and it's easy to forget and to stay top of mind with your prospects. Today, Rob and Kennedy share some practical advice on ways to automate a follow-up process and how to never let a warm lead go cold. Now, before we get to the interview, I want to remind you that we'll be meeting Thursday for the Sales Babble Telebabble at 5 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Central, and 2 p.m. Pacific Time. We'll be meeting with other sales babblers to network, and this week we'll be focusing on ways to follow up. Don't forget to put this telebabble on your Thursday calendar. Next Sales Babble is sponsored by Habanero Media, a podcasting agency for B2B brands. Podcasting's the easiest way to turn your executives into thought leaders with content that reaches your ideal clients. Haven't you heard that podcasting is the new blogging? Start a podcast today. Go to habaneromedia.net. That's habanero with an H, like the hot pepper. It's a hot idea, like the hot pepper. Go to habaneromedia.net. And so, with no further ado, let's get to it. Welcome, Kennedy. Welcome, Rob. Are you ready to babble?
We are. Absolutely.
Kennedy, the reason I bumped into you, I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, and it said that you're a mind reader.
That's right.
That certainly caught my eye. Maybe you could speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, basically, Rob and I both come from the entertainment industry. So I use psychology, body language, getting into people's heads in order to entertain them. And then Rob is a hypnotist, which means he does crazy things on stage, making people do ridiculous things. And then a few years ago, about 10 years ago, we both started using those skills in addition to being on stage, entertaining people, making them laugh. We also started to use those skills of getting into people's heads in order to market ourselves, book gigs for ourselves, and then help other businesses to get into people's heads and understand how they think, why we get motivated and all that kind of stuff. So now we get into people's heads on sort of two levels.
How's it you guys partnered together? How's it you're together?
We've been friends for about 18 years. We met at a magician's convention of all things. As a hypnotist and a mind reader, we have a big crossover with the magic world, and we went to a magic convention, got chatting there, and we both just sort of hit it off, became friends. We were both off doing our own independent gigging stuff. And over a period of time, we sort of found out that we were sort of secretly building online businesses as well. So I was teaching hypnosis. Kennedy was helping other entertainers to get fully booked by selling them courses and that kind of thing. And one day we sort of swapped notes and realized that we were sort of closet entrepreneurs.
Or closetpreneurs.
And we sort of said, I've been doing this thing called email marketing. And he said, I've been doing this thing called email marketing as well. I've got this thing called Aweber for sending out emails. He's like, I've got this thing called Aweber for sending out emails. And we
those are the days.
Our lives were a bit more parallel than we thought. And that's
that's how it all began. And then other people would see what we're doing and say, you'd be really useful to my business. Will you come and talk about how we understand our customers? And then we got really quite good at sort of email marketing and that kind of thing.
Okay, so let me put you to test. What is the number that I'm thinking of?
24.
That is exactly right. How did you do that?
It's unbelievable. I know, it's a gift.
All right, let's say the real reason. Let me tell you the real reason I got you on here is that one of the biggest problems that salespeople have is they are terrible at following up. They can hustle, they can get a meeting, they can maybe get somebody on the phone, but on average, I believe some of the statistics show that the average person follows up twice.
Eek. Yeah. That's terrifying, isn't it? I mean, the thing is, I think the reason for follow-up is being difficult is because first of all, it's not our fault because it's ingrained into us as human beings, is that hunter-gatherer, go and chase the new prey thing is so much more sexy. Like the idea of meeting new people is one of the things that when you ask most salespeople, what do you like about sales? They say, oh, well, I like the money and the sale and the actual cash. That's great. But also, I just love meeting new people. So that means it's not hardwired into us to go and nurture relationships, because if you think about the thing that we've done since the beginning of time, since we were, those Neanderthals, was we would chase new prey. So follow-up's not really built into us and like persevering with somebody. The thing is, there is more potential in the relationships we've already got. Like, I know for most of us, we all know in our business, in your business, and everyone, in all of the listeners' businesses, we know that if just a percentage of our customers knew a bit more about what it is we do, the products we have available, if they just knew about more of our products and services, they would buy them because they need that help, and we would have bigger businesses.
And sales is pretty much the only arena of our lives where it's okay to follow up that much. Like, I mean, if you were trying to woo a lady or something and you ask her out on a date and she says no, and you ask her a second time, she says no. By the time you get to 3, it's creepy. By the time you get to 7 or 9, you've got an injunction against you. And likewise, if you ask your husband or wife what they want for their dinner and you ask them any more than twice, they're going to put you in a home for being senile, aren't they? So sales is the only thing in life where you can keep going back and to somebody who hasn't said yes yet, and it's sort of considered okay.
And the challenge, I think, with following up is remembering to do it, having a system to do it, and knowing what to say so it doesn't sound like you're saying the same thing over and over again. Like if you go back to somebody going, hey, just checking in, and you do that 400 times, we're all worried that our egos are going to get dented by looking desperate. And I think our egos definitely get in the way. We know that the enemy of most of our success is definitely our egos. And if we can put that to one side, if we didn't go on stage and try out new material every so often or regularly, we wouldn't come up with brand new amazing material. If you went to see a comedian, your favorite comedian, and every time they did that show, every time you saw them, they did the same material, the same jokes, you'd be like, what's going on? So for us as salespeople trying to build our business, we've got to become unafraid of trying new material. And our new material is, what's our new reason to follow up with that person? To make a connection and actually do it from a place of care and from a place that where we know the thing we're selling is of value to that person. And all we're doing is moving that person forward.
I'm totally on board with this, and I like this. So maybe you could give us some ideas, some thoughts on how people can do this.
I think the biggest challenge we have is in follow-up is remembering to do it. And on those days when we wake up, we're just not feeling that we're on our A game, going, I don't know any reason to follow up with Mike. Mike's been ghosting me for years, and I'm just not feeling, I'm not feeling great today. I'm not on my shiniest day. The solution to that is to not have to do it, right? If we could figure out a way of not having to do it, yet it still happened and we still get the result, that we're in a much happier place. And that's where automation comes into it, right? So let's imagine you take somebody and then when they inquire through whichever channel they come through, whether it's through LinkedIn, the way that we became friends, or if it's the way that they come through your website or whatever the heck it is, and you have the technology hooked up, and you can do this pretty inexpensively by getting somebody to do it, where when they inquire, they are pushed into your CRM system, because none of us love the idea of getting an email from someone and then having to respond to the email and add them to our CRM. Well, why not eliminate that step so that anybody who sends an inbound inquiry to us is automatically pushed into our CRM, so they're already there. And now what we're doing, we're dealing with the inquiry in a way that's already in the native platform, the CRM, so it's already in there. So we have to eliminate that step. My whole thing in business is find the stuff you don't like doing and stop doing it. Find a way of minimizing that if you can't find a way of enjoying it.
And beyond that, the stuff that's likely to fall through the cracks. Like we've all had or know people, it's us for sure, where you've got a CRM and you forget to do that follow-up, or you forget to put that person in the first place. And if you've got a CRM and you've got different stages of a process, the truth is remembering to follow up with which people, and then it is difficult. So everything that you can do to
It's not enjoyable either. It's not even difficult. It's bloody boring.
Yeah, whereas to automate that follow-up sequence and have them move the stages without you doing anything,
is what you need to do. So the follow-up then becomes a series of communication that you sit down on your peak day where you're actually thinking, maybe it's the day after, listen to us have a chat about, you think, those two guys, that Rob and that Kennedy, and on the show, they talked about this amazing thing. I think I'm feeling pumped up to go and do it. Well, if you've got that energy right now, to go and set it up once into an automated process, so that when you've reached out to somebody once, after X number of days, an automatic email is going to go to that person and just check in with them. And then it's going to wait a few more days and check in with them again. And then all you have to do is remember to stop them from that process, or even better, have an automation set up so when they do buy from you, that automatically stops the process. So now what we end up with, you could have like depending on what your sales cycle is, whether it's weeks, days, months, years, whatever, you can have that process put in there so that now it's automated. Let me tell you a quick story about how I did this, right? Oh, yeah, go on.
Let me tell you the thing to struggle with this is like, what exactly do you write? Because you have to like pre-write them ahead of time, and they got to sound authentic, and they got to sound like for real. Like, I have an email in my autoresponder that says, "Hey, Kennedy, did you get the download?" That's all it says. That one really works.
Yeah.
No kidding, because it feels like a personalized conversation. The big challenge we make, Pat, is that a lot of us try and write emails as if they're not going to a human being.
Right.
You have to imagine, so when you're writing them, think about the last person you just had a conversation with and you did do follow-up with, or what you would have said to them. First thing to do is open up the email conversation you actually had with that person and use that as the basis of this series of automated emails.
Awesome.
Right?
Good idea.
Yeah.
Good idea.
So take a genuine conversation, because what emails are not is newsletters. They are not newsletters. Nobody wants a damn newsletter. Nobody cares about that. We're too busy. And if you've got a solution to my problem, damn well get me closer to understand how you're going to solve it, right? So instead of that, take a real conversation. If you haven't had one of those conversations yet, don't worry, because all you're going to do instead is open your emails and think, right, who's a person who I should be following up with? All I'm going to do, all you have to commit yourself to doing right now is doing follow-up for that one person.
To get the framework.
Exactly. So if that person doesn't, and how long is my sales cycle? Okay, it's 6 months. All right, my sales cycle is 6 months. I'm going to communicate with them quite intensely to begin with, and this is kind of the formula. To begin with, you're going to be quite intense because you want to keep that relationship. It's like if somebody doesn't call you back for that second date within the first few weeks, you're probably going to move on and get back on Tinder, so you're going to have quite intense relationship for a while, a communication, and then you're going to calm down a little bit. And then it's every now and again, you're going to go intense again, and then you're going to calm down, and you're going to make it have ebbs and flows the way you would in a natural conversation. And what you want to do is simulate real life conversation for these kind of things. And so,
I love it. I love it. This is a great idea.
Oh, thank you. So this is the stuff that we talk about all the time on, we're talking about real email marketing. This is about email salesmanship, right? This is about creating relationships between you and a person. They realize they feel like they're not being broadcast to. You can do this across loads of different elements of the business. So now what you've got is this 6, 8, 12, 24-month sales cycle that someone's in, they're hearing from you, and eventually one day, you're going to be just coming out of the first prospect meeting with somebody else, maybe in a year's time. And you're going to open your emails and check them as you're leaving the meeting. And someone who you haven't even thought about for 12 months is going to be there with the words, "That sounds great," and you're gonna have the problem of figuring out what the hell sounds great. And if that's the problem you've got, it's quite a nice little problem to have. And at that point, you just open up your CRM, or you're probably able to just scroll down in the email that they're replying to be honest, and see what you sent to them. And now you pick up that conversation.
The other thing that's really nice about this is it's especially true if you've got a fairly long sales cycle, is to remember that when you're building this out, the job of any particular set of emails within this campaign is not necessarily to get a person from cold or having met them once to buying from you. If your sales process involves getting them on the phone, getting them in the room, getting them on a webinar, there's stages of that. And so any particular sequence of emails only has to achieve one thing, and that is to move them one little step down the road. So if your first bit, if you know that I physically can't sell this piece of machinery to somebody without taking it to them or bringing them to me and showing it to them, physically almost nobody's going to buy it without having a go, and you know that demo, that meeting is part of your sales process, then there's a campaign set of emails, and that the only goal of it is to get them into that room. Great. Now, if they buy it there and then in the room, happy days. If they don't, the next set of emails is only to get them to reconsider the fact that they might want this. So remember, with any set of emails, you're only moving them a little nudge further forward. You don't particularly, when you at first look at it, have to think, okay, what's every email I'm going to send them from now until 12 months time when they're most likely to buy
Exactly. So break up the campaign into destinations, right? So what's the destination of this piece of the sequence?
Oh, okay. This is a really good point, because I would like to get a sense of like, what is the value you're going to be adding in each of these emails? Because it certainly shouldn't be this. It shouldn't be the same email over and over again. No. Like, I'm just checking in to see, would you like to get on the phone?
Yeah. Right. Did you read this email I sent you the other day? Did you read the email about the email? Yes. So there's a bunch of different things that you can do. And actually, when you sit down and realize that everything you send to them does have to have some sort of value in it, but that's quite easy to conjure up. So we have like a list of 22 things that we sort of refer to as our sort of base reasons to send an email about anything. And they're things like, I'll just give you some off the top of my head. They're things like a case study or a testimonial or something interesting. We've just had this note from Jeff. Jeff's in Omaha, and he said, and then describe some stuff. That's a reason.
Where's Omaha?
I don't know. That's a reason to send an email. The next reason might be that it's some interesting piece of legislatory change or something that's changed in the world that affects this thing. It's an interesting reason to send out an email about a thing. If you go for the fact that there is something in the news falls under the same category, I'm now racking my brains for the others.
Yeah, but basically you've look at all the reasons that people don't buy what you've got, because basically this entire campaign, at some point, after just making sure that did you get my email, it's overcoming objections. But so what we do with everything we do, whether we're doing a training course or we're delivering seminars or on our podcast or whatever, is we start off with a mind map, and we just take the thing that we've got to do and that we're going to talk about, and we break it down to all the challenges people have with that thing. So it's going to be very specific to the thing you're selling. But let's imagine you're trying to sell the fact you should listen to our podcast, right? So we've got a podcast. It's called The Email Marketing Show. And we know that the challenges with that are some people don't know what a podcast is, right? But the majority of the world don't know what a podcast is. So we have a huge amount of our content that we send to people by email on our social media channels is all about what the heck's a podcast, why you might want to listen to one, how you listen to one, who listens to them. And that's just a bunch I've just come off the top of my head. And I did a really deep dive on that.
And that's nothing to do with us or our podcast. That's literally just overcoming the objection of you should listen to podcasts.
To podcasts. And then the next stage down is, we've got a podcast, you should probably listen to it. And okay, so what's your podcast about? What's the subject? Why is that important to me? Why should I care about that thing? Why are you an expert on that? So you can see already, I've now come up with, I think I've just listed off probably 20 different questions I've got to answer. And within each of those questions I've got to answer, there are probably 3, 4, maybe 5 answers to each of those questions. Suddenly, I've now got 20 multiplied by 5, mathematician. 100, right? I've got 100 emails, or bits of content, which are about that journey. So that might include social proof. It might involve a bunch of stories that overcome different parts of the objection to do with, is my company too big? Is my company too small? Is my problem too big? Is my problem unique? Does it work for me? All that sort of stuff. And if you just tell stories, give case studies, just give them checklists of here's 3 things you could do with this thing. How can I use it is a really important one. So there's not just one purpose for the thing that you're selling probably.
So what about frequency? How often should we be sending emails out?
So it's going to vary. We send out an email every single day, 365 days.
Oh my goodness.
One business that you've got is 5 days a week. So that's pretty close. The big thing here is that what we're really trying to push people to do is either to remain interested or to physically opt out and reply and say no thank you or whatever and get themselves out of their business. Getting them to a no quickly is just as good as it is moving them down.
It's basically using a standard sales system of trying to get them to the yes or the no as quickly as possible.
But running a podcast is different than doing a B2B conversation, which is mostly what we've been talking about. We have a 6-month sales cycle. My notion would be we should be sending them out once a week or every few days, but for a podcast, I can maybe see they would almost be like little newsletters. I almost feel like, or am I wrong here?
I mean, there could be. It depends on what you see by newsletter. Ours tend not to be very fanciful with graphics and stuff.
It's not like your school newsletter with like who's won an award and which teacher's teacher of the week and all
quote of the month and all that rubbish and a little cartoon that you nicked off the internet. No, but instead it's more like these should look like one-to-one conversations. People do not realize that they're in automation when they're in one of our automations. We get replies to our emails. So one of the things we have when we have guests on our podcast, which is every alternate week, we'll interview some kind of guest on some area of email marketing. And the guests who are very smart at email marketing, that's why they're on our show, reply to an automated email from me, air quotes, because they think it's a real conversation. And that's how you want it to be. They need to be genuine, heartfelt, caring conversations that you are taking and you are using them at scale. Not to be disingenuous, but you're just using them at scale so you can have multiple conversations and increase those conversions.
I think one of the things that we see a lot that we consider to be a bit of a mistake is that marketers or salespeople will take an email conversation off track too quickly for fear of bombarding somebody with sales material. So I've got my product, I'm going to send you an email with a case study, an email with something else, and an email with another case interesting, this email thing. And then I feel like I've bombarded you with sales stuff too much now. So now I'm going to take you off and I'm going to give you a load of sort of vaguely relevant stuff that feels a bit more valuable than me pitching at you for a little while. And then eventually I'll try and get you back on track with that sales process. And actually what happens is you've just distracted them with a whole bunch of stuff.
And they just suddenly become irrelevant as well. Aren't you the person who's selling beds? And now you're talking about that family vacation you took to Florida. Hang on, I thought you were a bed salesman. So you want to make sure that doesn't get people too distracted. So in terms of frequency, when you've sent out that initial communication, what you really want to do, I'd say, is the next day, just have a really soft, hey, just checking you received that. Have you got any questions? Email go out automatically. And then a few days later, 4 days later, something like that, just going back saying, hey, I was just thinking about you again. Or something like that, just really soft, conversational. And then leave it another 5 days or so that every 5 to 7 days, they start just hearing different things. Hey, I just saw this thing. We just got this testimonial or this really cool bit of business or a case study where you start overcoming objections. And these things should overcome objections. They should show them different ways of using what you do, so different applications. And of course, they should position you as an expert or somebody they can trust. So that's what you should be doing over those days. And then just go a slow burn, start rolling it down to like once a week, and stuff like that. That'll be absolutely fine. So if there's something you could go and take action on from this conversation, I would say do yourself a favor and automate your follow-up if you hate doing it. Put people into a system so that you're going to follow up. You're not going to leave them high and dry, because at the end of the day, the reason you had a conversation with them in the first place was because they needed some help with something.
Right.
And if they just haven't got time right now to consider that your solution to it, and you let them go a couple of months, 2 months even, they're going to have forgotten that your solution even exists, and they're going to continue having that problem. So instead of doing that, just stay on their radar, but do it in an automated way so you can scale it, so you can keep doing the bit you enjoy, which is meeting new people, networking and chatting with new people. And then all these people suddenly start to feel like you really care about them because you're persistent, but persistent in a non-aggressive way. Anyway, it's just adding value and keeping you on the top of their mind. Automate the whole thing, but do it based on what real simulated one-to-one communication.
And the first step to that, like I said, is just to take the bit where you can see most people fall through the cracks, or take the bit that you find most difficult and just automate that. Just set yourself the little goal of, I'm just going to automate that bit of this sales process. And once that's done, say, great, now which bit's, the next weakest link, or which is the next bit I find most difficult or most uninteresting, and then do that bit. And it slowly builds out until eventually you've replaced the whole thing.
Yeah.
This is really terrific. Really, really terrific. How can people find the Email Marketing Podcast?
Okay, it's really easy. It's called The Email Marketing Show at theemailmarketingshow.com. And you'll find it by searching for The Email Marketing Show on your favorite podcast player.
Excellent, excellent. Gentlemen, thank you very much for babbling here on Sales Babble. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for letting us babble.
Now, to connect with Rob and Kennedy, you can find their podcast at www.theemailmarketingshow.com, or you can find links to all their social media at salesbabble.com/316, as well as links to habaneromedia.net, that hot idea on how podcasts attract new buyers. If you have a question or a comment, don't hesitate to reach out to connect. And don't forget to put this Thursday on your calendar for the weekly Sales Babble Telebabble at 5 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Central, and 2 p.m. Pacific Time. Start working on your sales network today. Lastly, if you enjoyed this podcast, please give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast app. Plus, share it with your friends, because that's the best way to get out the word. That's all I've got for today. Is there anything else? Nope, that's it. That's all I got for today. So until next week, take care and have a highly profitable and a successful selling day.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.
This is a production of Habanero Media.